Hello, and welcome to Breakthrough Conversations with Coach Pete and Gloria. Today, we're going to dive into the topic of transformative journeys, living the life you love. So, to start us off, Pete, what does living a life you love mean to you personally? And has that definition evolved over time at all?
It's evolved. Definitely, it's evolved. To live the life you love, that's a concept. One of the things that drew us together is we have that in our practice, our mission statement to help people live the life they love. That was fairly late coming to me to think of things like that. So my life's been kind of a journey. It took a while for me to grasp on to living a life I love. It wasn't in my upbringing to think about that, think about life purpose and living a life you love. It wasn't that um, formative or like where I could make that choice. So once I found that out through a lot of coaching and a lot of self-reflection, it's made all the difference in the world, all the difference in the world. I had to, didn't have to, but I did. I was guided to take a look within myself, within my heart of kind of what was inside, what's in little Pete inside of me and what's always been there. And I had to make those connections. And once I did, that's when I began to live the life that I love and purposefully and connection with other people, which I denied for so long. So I'm kind of living proof that it's never too late to discover either purpose or the life you want, the life you love. It's all there. Just have to take the time to reflect, think about it, and then make changes if that's appropriate.
Yeah, I know for myself, um, I was I had the belief that I'm not allowed to live the life that I really want, that I would love. And so there can be those formative experiences that we have that actually imprint us with these conditioned beliefs that are not true. And because I was conditioned that way and I believed it was true, I had this pattern that just kept showing up that kept telling me, yep, I don't get to. And so it was actually through getting to have a mentor, a coach, or a counselor, all of the above, that I was able to start to challenge that. Because one of the other beliefs that I had was that I had to get it right. So if you tell me what's right, then I can do it. But I didn't know to look inside of myself to know what my truth was. And so I was ping ponging all around. And so one of the things that happens as we grow in age is we actually make new connections inside of our system, our nervous system. So we have the brain in the palm of the hand here, and I know my viewers are familiar with this because I do it all the time. But when we flip our lids, when we get upset, when we get scared, when we get startled, we actually lose the capacity to maintain our prefrontal cortex. It flips up, and we don't have it anymore. But when we're growing and developing, we also don't have all of those neural connections, not until we get around 25 years of age. Then we all of a sudden can start to make connections that we never could make before. So when I was about 25, 24, 25, I was living in Texas and I'm driving down the highway. I have two little boys. I was a single mom at the time. And all of a sudden it was like zing. I had this zing experience and I made connections in my mind. I thought, what on earth am I doing living here so far away from my family? And I made a big pivotal choice to move back because I wanted my children to know my family. And so that's a developmental aspect. But when we have that, and then we can also receive the wisdom of others that can support us to continue to grow that superhighway, then we can actually access that in any aspect of our life. I'm curious, Pete, hearing my story, is there a pivotal moment or experience that inspired you to make intentional changes in order to live that life that brings more joy and fulfillment?
Well, there were several because one of the things that really helped me toward living a life that I love is I kept coming back to counseling, coaching. I was in group therapy for a while. I was attracted to it. So that several steps I learned through those experiences. And I had one counselor once. He did a lot of I haven't tried this myself for my clients, but someday I will. He did a lot of guided meditation work because I met with him in person
Mhm.
back when you could meet in person a little easier than today. And he took me on a guided meditation that I will never forget.
Mm.
And it was kind of like a back to the future view. He wanted me to just close my eyes and picture a beautiful scene from my memory, beautiful scene. And I pictured hitting a baseball to my two sons when they were about 8 and 10 years old on a hot summer day in August. And I could just feel the hot sun on my face. And we had this period of time, my wife and I, my family, where we actually moved back to the town that my wife and I grew up in.
Mm.
And that was during this time period. So it was on a ball field where I learned to play ball.
Yeah.
And so I'm hitting like fungo bats, it's called, and that my boys are running and laughing. I just hear their joy of learning, throwing, catching. And then he guided me to enter that scene. And I entered that scene. Tears are gonna come to my eyes. So I'm just warning you, because it's such a beautiful memory.
Yeah.
I joined that scene as a 10-year-old boy with my 10-year-old boys, 10 and 8-year-old boys. And we played together and we laughed together. It was unbelievable. So that was transformative. It helped me open up to the little Pete, that's my name. So little Pete inside of me. That was one of the first times I really got in touch with him again. And then through other coaches, counselors, they explored that with me. And I love that about myself, and I love that with some of my clients. Not everybody can go there that easily, but it's there. That little person, that little Gloria, that little Pete is inside us. And it's great to listen to them because they knew a lot.
Yeah. I like to refer to that aspect of myself as my innocence. When you think about your innocence, and when you can step into your innocence, that is a magical land where everything's possible. We are not limited there. We are exponentially powerful, in fact. So another question I'd like to get to ask you is, when challenging things happen, and they do happen, and setbacks, how is it that you're able to stay true to your vision of living a life that you love? What's that look like?
It's a great question. I think it depends on how you arrive there. If you go through the process of really, you use the word often when we talk about choices. If you activate your choices, first of all, you have to acknowledge that you have choice.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't. If we don't, it's my belief, no one has to agree with me, but if you don't really explore what's inside of you and how you came to be, then you don't really exert free choice. You're just acting. It's almost by rote. It's by your experience. You just do, do, do. If we take the time to reflect and really look within and solve the jigsaw puzzle pieces of how you came to be, the drama, the trauma in our lives, because every life has drama. Do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
Not every life has trauma. Some people are lucky and don't have trauma, but drama, there isn't a life that doesn't have some drama. And it's my training and my own experience that it's the drama or trauma or both that shape us, how we navigate that or how we survive it if it's trauma. That's, how we learn to be. But sometimes, and this is what took me so long, I wish it didn't. I was guided to look at what I gave up to
Mm.
navigate some of the drama. And what we give up in our formative years, we can reclaim if we take a look at it. But you have to look at it first. Does that make any sense?
It does. It does. And I also want to acknowledge that in my training, I do believe that most every single person on earth has trauma, but they don't know how to recognize it because it's not taught. Um, And yet also, I want to also acknowledge that when I have to pause a moment because I just got ahead of myself and I forgot what I was going to say next. So I like to be transparent about those things. It helps me to come back. So the thing that I wanted to acknowledge is um, when I have a perception of a setback, or I'm telling myself that something's too much or overwhelming or challenging or however I want to describe it, when I slow down and I recognize how I'm defining my life, I'm getting definitions to everything all of the time. That's how we make meaning out of things. It's how what we make things mean. And when I can recognize the pattern I'm running, that's when I can be empowered. So I want to be able to recognize my own pattern. And as you say, that requires a little self-reflection. It requires, slowing down, pausing, taking a moment, taking a breath, being honest with ourselves. And when I can recognize it, then I am empowered when I choose to step back into my own heart, to step back into my what I like to call my true nature, my innocence. And that radically can shift how I'm experiencing my life. Um,
I love that. If I could just add one thing, one of the tools I use sometimes with some clients is I ask them to look at family albums. Some people don't remember way back. I have a memory. I go back to about 2 or 3 years old. Not everybody can do that. But if you look at photographs, the old photographs, they tell a story if you look at it from a different perspective. I had one client once, a woman who looked at it, then we had our next session. She said, Pete, I learned when I stopped smiling.
oh,
She saw early pictures, and at the age of 6 and onward, there wasn't this beautiful smile that she had earlier. And that led to a conversation. What was happening then? And so it's part of the jigsaw puzzle. Photographs can really help.
yeah, yeah, that's so true. Um, I use pictures in different ways like that as well.
Oh yeah?
I do. Well, you were talking about little Pete or little Gloria. One of the practices that I was coached to use or counseled to use was when you're doing this type of reflective, when you want to really begin to transform your life. And it's important to be really honest about the life you've lived. Um, so if you find a picture of that age of person, right, then you can look back and you can start to have a conversation with them. So I've looked for pictures of different ages of Gloria in order to have those conversations because nobody had the conversation with that younger version of myself. Well, so I call it a time travel. So you can actually step through time, you can have the conversation, and there's an experience and there's a magic that happens that really begins to change you at a cellular level when you do that.
I love it. I love it. Time travel.
Well, so as we're coming to a close, I want to give our listeners some practical steps that they can take away in order for them to start moving towards living a life they love. And so, what are some of the mindset shifts that you recognize are important on this journey?
Well, I think it's important to notice the chatter in our brains, the chatter in our head. Because as we go through life, we talk to ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's that chatter that you can learn so much from. Like if you take on a new project and maybe something's in my head that says, "Oh, Pete, you can't aspire to that. You don't know enough to do that, or you haven't earned the right to do that, or you're being boastful, or whatever the lines are, the phrases are." It's great to get in touch with those. And are I know you must be familiar with Pema Chodron, a Buddhist teacher of 45 years. Brilliant woman. I love to listen to her. Um, her teaching. She calls them Shempas.
Mm.
She says the practice is to catch the Shempa and take a look at it. And then she has a great laugh, just like you laughed. And she laughs and she says, and don't beat yourself up for doing that again, for not feeling enough, or not having the confidence or putting yourself down with these Shempas, with these voices. She said, celebrate when you catch it. and then take a look at it in your hand. And then you have choice. That's where choice comes in again. And that's where, because I love what in other talks that we've had, you've used the phrase magical thinking. It's not magical thinking, it's process thinking, it's practice thinking. Practice the negative thinking, catch it, and then you have a choice. Am I going to go forward with that? Or am I going to make a change and say, no, I am enough. I can do that. I've earned the right to do that. I'm going to do that, and that's the process. Sorry, I went a little too long with that, but I think it's so exciting when you practice that. And it is a practice. If you take it on, it's a lifelong practice, and that's where change can happen.
Yeah, I agree. And with that same practice, what I like to encourage our listeners to do when they begin to notice that they are telling themselves something, to practice noticing it from a place of non-judgment. Instead of, because for myself, when I first started this practice, I would just feel so much shame. That was my go-to emotion, that I would just want to collapse because I was like unworthy and I shouldn't do this. And those were the core beliefs that ran me. And now I know them. I've gotten to know them really well. But I don't identify with them. I recognize the younger versions of myself, and I recognize the experiences that created those thoughts, those experiences, and what I made it mean. And now I recognize they're not true. I can still feel them when they hit me, and I can still choose to step into my true nature that I do identify with, which is a different frequency of vibration. And when I step into that, it does transform the way I see my life.
It's beautiful. And it can be easier and easier to get there. Even if
Well,
you slip back, even if something sneaks in,
uh,
that's the practice to just grab onto it, take a look at it, and you can change it. And those small changes can be transformative. They really can. They really can.
they truly are. Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed this conversation a lot. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Me too. Thank you.